الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على من اصطفى نبيه محمد عليه أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم. أيها الحضور الكريم، أصحاب السعادة الحضور، ضيوفنا الأعزاء المشاركون في ملتقى التميز البحثي، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أهلا وسهلا بكم في ورشة العمل الأولى، وعنوانها وسائل التواصل الاجتماعي لتعزيز تأثير الأبحاث العلمية. تقدمها دكتور إيميلي تشوينوفسكي، رئيسة قسم النشر في شركة نولج إي. ورشة العمل تقدم باللغة الإنجليزية، كما تتوفر ترجمة فورية من خلال الرابط المعلن على الشاشة الخارجية. في حالة رغبتكم بالسماع للترجمة الفورية بإمكانكم استخدام الQR كود اللي على الشاشة الخارجية والاستماع لها بالسماعات الخاصة. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this morning workshop. Over the next hour, we will be glad to have Dr. Émilie with us in the first workshop titled Using Social Media to Enhance the Impact of Your Research. Before opening this panel discussion or this workshop, I would like to take the opportunity to introduce Dr. Émilie. Émilie joined Knowledge E in March 2020 as a senior editor for Knowledge E Publishing and was appointed as the head of publishing in September 2020, providing editorial guidance and strategic oversight for the publishing division. She is developing the portfolio of publishing services, cementing new partnership, and offering bespoke consultation and coaching in journal management. Émilie has 8 years experience in the commercial publishing sector, working first as editorial manager and later as head of product and marketing for the two world-class microeconomic research publisher, managing large publishing teams based across in the global. The move to Knowledge E reflects Émilie's enduring interest in academic research. Since gaining a PhD in English literature from University of Bristol in 2012, she has maintained strong ties within the academic community, publishing numerous articles and conference papers, and giving lectures in museum university around the world. In addition, she sits on editorial board of a leading literary journal and university press. So please, let's welcome Dr. Émilie.
On that note, the computer seems to have disappeared. Someone? Anyone? There we go. Brilliant. So welcome everyone, and this computer does not like me at all. Thank you for joining me in today's workshop. And I just want to say this is actually a workshop. This isn't a sales pitch. I'm not selling anything to you. I just want to tell you some of my experiences about how social media can really help increase that research impact. Before we start, I just want to run through a couple of housekeeping points. First of all, we will be providing some resources after this event, useful guides, relevant articles, and things like that. So please do copy this link or scan the QR code. It's also on the piece of paper that we handed around, the black one. And once you provide your contact details, we can then send everything out to you later. Secondly, before we begin, it wouldn't be a social media thing if I didn't give you a hashtag to use. So if you do talk about this event at all today, please do use this hashtag. It'll help people find us, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. So a little bit more about me. Obviously, I've already been thoroughly introduced, but just in case. As you know, I am head of publishing at Knowledge E, so publishing and promoting a large portfolio of academic journals and offering a wide variety of publishing consultancy services. I'm also digital communications editor for the British Association of Romanticism Studies and director of a globally recognized literary society. All of these roles require extensive understanding and use of social media platforms to promote research. In addition, as mentioned, I've published multiple articles and book chapters. My field is 19th century literature, English literature, and use all my social media tricks to help promote them. And today I want to share some of my knowledge with you so that by the end of the short workshop, you will be able to describe the benefits of the promotion of research and researchers, identify and use new methods to promote your research and yourselves, and make your research more accessible and increase its impact. The workshop will have three main parts. The first part looks at the different types of social media platforms out there and considers how they can benefit us as researchers. The second part discusses professional profiles and how to build networks. And the third section will focus on promoting research, and basically it's going to give some useful tips for how to construct your content on social media, on different mediums. But first, in order to understand how we can use social media to increase our research impact, we need to understand exactly what social media is. Social media is typically defined as some form of computer-based technologies that allow users to share ideas, content, and information through virtual networks and online communities. And this is a really, really broad definition that basically it could include practically anything. So before we begin the workshop, I just want to do a quick exercise. Can everyone who uses some form of social media raise your hands? Obviously I do, so my hand is right up there. Anyone? Come on, don't be shy. Put your hand up. Great. So now I want to know what you think counts as social media. Now this is a thing called Mentimeter. It's an online, sorry, keep moving away from the microphone. It's an online activity exercise, so we can all do everything together. So if you can either scan the code, if you're too far away, go to menti.com and fill in that number. I'm going to try and do it myself by exiting the slideshow, so bear with me momentarily. Hopefully this works. Yes, great. So you should all see this screen now. What counts as social media on your phones? Pop stuff in. You can put anything in. You can have lots of answers. So I'm going to do some myself. Yes, maybe. Hang on. Let me go. Oh, I can read it out to you. Hold on. No. So 95080841 is the code, or there's the QR code. So if we just go back to the activities, so I'm just going to submit one, and then if we go to the results, brilliant, so people are starting to put stuff in. Twitter and Facebook are clearly the front runners. Instagram, apps, yeah, basically anything online could technically be social media. WhatsApp, yeah, LinkedIn, Snapchat, yeah, lots of Instagrams. ResearchGate, yes, thank you very much. That's something we're going to be talking about later. There are a lot of specific academic channels for social media which are often forgotten about. TikTok, what else have we got in there? Brilliant, yeah, there's a good one, so that's a good start. I will just go back to the screen share now. Thank you for that. So, I think that's a really great starting point for today. Apologies, I had a little trouble with the font earlier. Sometimes the computer I'm working on doesn't actually recognize the font we use as a company. I thought I'd caught all the slides, but clearly one slipped by me, so apologies. This is not our professional font, I hasten to add. But anyway, we've had a good starting point, and this is a good start for today's workshop and get you all warmed up. And there'll be more of these activities throughout the day, so please don't put your phones away. Keep them out. We will need to do more of these. Anyway, on to the main event. And I want to start, before giving you some sort of tips, on sort of looking at how things were and how they are now. As researchers, we work for years and years to produce publishable material. It affirms the value of our work. It allows us to engage with our peers and to contribute to discussions and debates within our field. We also have to publish to gain credit for our ideas, to get jobs, to get promotions, to receive funding, and to build our reputations. Basically, it's the engine of academia. However, despite all of this, it's not enough to just be published. As researchers, we all want to be read and quoted, to know that our studies are helping others develop their work, not just languishing on a dusty shelf or an unused website. And I have to say, it's heartbreaking when you never get cited for a piece of work. It's happened to me once, and it makes me really sad. And I want to help you all not experience that in the future. So to have real impact, research must also be shared, discussed, and used by other scholars. Now, previously, a researcher's work was pretty much restricted to physical print and maybe the odd conference, with copies of the journal or book printed and sent to libraries, where it waited to be read by the small coterie of relevant experts. This meant direct engagement could unfold over years and years, via notes and letters to the editor, and the occasional furtive discussion in a conference where someone attacks what you published 10 years ago. And evaluations of impact were based on citation in other publications. Basically, the whole process was incredibly slow. Therefore, at that point, the best way to ensure high impact was to publish in a high-impact journal. And the only way to get additional promotion was basically for the author to self-cite in future articles. But this is no longer the case. Concepts of impact are expanding every day as the digital era opens up multiple new social media channels. These enable researchers to promote their studies to a global audience and engage in real-time debate with leading scholars around the world. And importantly, this means we as researchers are no longer restricted to small coteries of specialist experts, but can engage with wider online communities. Moreover, we can now frame our research in different ways for different audiences, from engaging blog posts and bite-sized nuggets of information on Twitter to video abstracts. Crucially, and this is really crucial, this means we no longer need to rely on citations to have impact. Or libraries, for that matter. Though, obviously, we still like libraries a lot. And this is true across every discipline, from life-saving medical sciences to in-depth literary analysis. As authors, we might think that our involvement with our piece of work ends with the acceptance letter from the editor. But this is no longer the case, and there is so much more that you can and should do. Before we get down to that, another activity. So obviously, we use social media all the time because it's fun and it's interesting and it's a really great way to pass the time when you're having a coffee or waiting for a friend to arrive. But it can also be a huge asset for researchers such as all of yourselves. So, you know the drill, scan the code, or if you can't scan the QR code, go to menti.com and type in this number. Again, I'm just going to do the poll myself as well, so bear with me. We'll go to voting. What shall I say? I'm hoping all of you are saying stuff as well. Don't just wait for me to start. I can't spell today. I apologize. Okay, so let's see what everyone's doing. Brilliant, yes, more audience, more citations, yes, that is the end goal for all of us, but try not to think just about citations. The whole point is there's so much more now that we can, so many more ways we can have impact. Oh, this is good, everyone's really exciting this one. Yeah, better reputation, great one. Being more visible. Understanding, sharing experiences, again, more exposure, yes, it's visibility and exposure. That's really one of the key benefits. Sorry, I keep moving away from the thing. What else have we got? It's moving so fast, I can't see. Promotion, well-known. I think everyone's, we're all on roughly the same page, so that's good. Great, let us go back to, this one. Sorry, I apologize, because I don't read Arabic. I keep struggling to find the right buttons. Okay, so basically overall, social media, it's just amazing. We should all be using it every day as researchers. It helps us promote our research. It helps us build our reputations. It helps us find new research, and that's a really key one. So often, if you don't know about a piece of research or a library, a specific journal, you're never going to go there. But if someone else is promoting their research on social media, you might come across something that's so useful for your own work that you never even knew existed. It helps you develop networks, and that's a really great thing, and we're going to talk about that more in a bit. Engaging debates, I have to say, I enjoy occasional Twitter debates. Sometimes they get, in my field, very intense. People get quite intense and don't want to play with those ones, but, it can be useful. And crucially, again, identify opportunities, and this is a big one because it's not, it's jobs. People post jobs on social media now. People post calls for papers, for articles, for special issues, for book chapters. And they also do it for conferences, for events like this. It's a really great way to identify opportunities for yourself, but also for your institution as a whole. And hopefully, this little recap will highlight why today's workshop, offering a brief introduction, will help you develop your strategy and make use of it in the future. So, section 1, how to be visible online. Yep, it's another activity, I'm afraid. So this is a very quick one, but this one in particular, keep your phone out. This activity has multiple questions, so once we look at the first results, we'll keep going through, so keep your phone out so you can answer the next set of questions afterwards. So if we revert back to the interweb, bear with me. So what social media do you use now? There's quite a few here. If you scroll down, you'll see there's quite a few. You can have multiple ones, so just tick every account you use. I use quite a few. YouTube. What else have we got? I think that's it for me. So let's see. Oh, wow. Twitter. Twitter's very popular. We like to see that. Facebook and TikTok languishing at the bottom. But wow, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, some Pinterest and some Reddit. Twitter's really scampering up the ranks. Okay, great. So if we go on to the next question, hope you've still got your phones out. It should, I'm just going to stick with the results for now rather than chopping and changing. So it should, if you look at your phone and refresh, you should be able to answer the next question. So yeah, good to see. Oh, I was about to say, nice to see no one's just sitting there only reading and not contributing, but okay, we've got a few. But good to see that more people are posting as well as reading. Not that there's anything wrong with just reading, as we said. You get a lot of, you still get to find research and find opportunities through just reading. But there are a few more opportunities out there that you're maybe not capitalizing on, and we'll discuss that a bit later. Okay, great. I think there's one more question in this one. Yes, there is. How often? Obviously, this is only going to be for part of you, because I saw half of you don't post at all. But for those of you that do post, how often do you post? Your phone should reset. Excellent. Oh, good. A few times a week. Good. Everyone's there. For those of you who only do it occasionally because you get embarrassed, or never because you have nothing to say, don't worry. You're not alone. There's a lot of people out there who... I myself, when I first started Twitter, I just signed up, and I think it was 2 years before I actually wanted to post a comment myself. I felt very shy about the whole thing. Okay, so good. We covered that off quite well, I think. So back to the presentation. Now, I think what we've just seen is that there's a huge amount of social media channels out there. It is a very diverse sector. And as researchers, the best way to increase our impact is to make ourselves as visible as possible by being in as many places as possible. And as we can see, there's an awful lot of places we can be. This doesn't just include Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It can also cover video channels like YouTube and Vimeo, academic channels like ResearchGate and Mendeley, professional profiles like LinkedIn, and discussion forums like Reddit. It's a bit like being in a busy souk, and this is an analogy I use quite a lot, actually. If you're only in one shop window, people might miss you. Therefore, to maximize the potential for your research to be seen and read, and hopefully, fingers crossed, actually cited, you need to be in as many shop windows as possible. Now, obviously, we all publish in scholarly journals, but we also need to be visible elsewhere. In professional profiles, in academic networks, on social networking sites, and producing accessible content, accessible versions of our research, such as blogs and video abstracts. The fact is, if you're only in scholarly journals, many people will never know you exist. And they'll never bother to read your research because they won't know it exists either. But you also need to think carefully and identify the best social media channels for you with your goals, because this isn't just, I want to be on every channel because some woman came into my university and told me I needed to be everywhere. It's what's going to work best to help you achieve your personal goals. Now, this is obviously research impact and citations, but it can be more nuanced around which audience you want to be reading your research or what type of impact you want to have, and I'll talk more about that shortly. So to help you decide which platforms and channels are best for you, you need to think about the type of audience you want to engage with. Obviously, we all want our fellow researchers to read our work, but who else do we want? In order to maximize our impact potential, we need to address as many different types of audience as possible. So think about whether you want to promote your work to industry specialists or government policymakers, to the press and popular media. And don't forget the wider community of potential readers. They might not have PhDs, they might not even, be operating within the higher education sector, but they could well be interested in your research. And if they comment on your social media post, then they help promote your research to a whole new field of contacts that you would never reach otherwise. You also need to think about how you want to promote your research, because each social media platform lets us do different things in different ways to target different audiences. We can announce and promote new publications on Twitter and Facebook. We can add them to our scholarly profiles. We can create accessible summaries of new publications on Kudos and YouTube to attract new readers. We can write engaging blog posts about our research and submit them to scientific organizations and listservs, making people more aware of our content in the broader topic. And finally, we can develop academic connections, industry connections, and subject-specific connections. Now, as I said, the more you do and the more audiences you can reach, the greater your potential impact is. But obviously, it takes time to build profiles, develop networks, and create content. And it's very, very, very important that you actually use these accounts regularly. So start small and develop over time, and don't take on too much too soon. Now, this is just a little snapshot of my online visibility. As you can see, I'm in a lot of places. Here you can see my Twitter profile, my ORCID profile, my LinkedIn profile, a blog I've written, my Google Scholar profile, and a rather unflattering snapshot of me on YouTube. But it did take time to achieve all of this. It's not something that happened overnight. It's taken 5 or 6 years of work to build up all of these things. So let's talk about how you can do this. How can you promote yourself online? The first step is to develop your online profile. This will allow you to start engaging with academic and professional communities and start building your online networks. Effectively, you just want to make it as easy as possible for people to find you. You want to be in all of these places, but you don't just want to be in them, you want to tell people that you're there so that they know that you're there and they know to go and find you. So, another activity. Again, this is a multi-question one, so do keep your phones out. I'll leave this up for a few minutes. Though to be fair, you're all getting quite quick at this, so I can probably move over now. Bear with me while I go to the activity 4. So, first of all, hopefully it should show this one, I think. So, I update mine all the time, sometimes, some of my other profiles I'm not perhaps as good or bad. So sorry, I apologize. I have done the wrong question on this one. If you skip, I'll skip to this one. Anyway, so, sorry. I've missed one about updating, but do you have a professional scholarly profile? Yes, lots of you do. That is great. Next question. And for those of you, the 15 of you so far, 16, not to call you out, who haven't yet got a profile, don't worry. I'm hoping by the end of today you will have gone away and built one. So yes, please tell me where your profiles are. Hopefully your thing will have changed a bit. Anyone? There we go, good. I get worried when no one actually submits anything that I've made a mistake with the link and it's gone wrong. Happy to see everyone's there. Good, lots of LinkedIn, it's great. Yes, university and website profiles are so important. We often forget about them. Specifically, we forget to update them and they can get a little outdated. I noticed when my introduction was being done, technically it was 8 years when I started at Knowledge, so I should say now that I've been in publishing for 10 years, I should really be updating my own profile. Good, yeah, I'm really glad to see that there's so many in Google Scholar and ResearchGate, ORCID, LinkedIn. This is great. It's nice to see. Clearly, you guys actually have nothing to learn from me at all. You know everything. Brilliant. And then the final question, I think, is, here we go, that crucial one. How often do you update all of these profiles? And this is really important because if this is the way that people recognize you, that they're seeing you, how they identify you, you need to keep them fairly up to date just so that it's the right information. Okay, brilliant. I will return to the slides. So, tips. This is the important bit. Tips for building your profile. Now, most of you seem to have profiles everywhere, but maybe you're not in quite all of the places that you could be. Remember that busy souk with its shop windows. Now, creating and updating high-impact online profiles might seem difficult and time-consuming, but it doesn't need to be. And so here are just a few really quick tips to help you. Even if you've already got a profile up there, maybe you're not, doing everything you could, but also if you, after today's discussion, realize that there's a few more places you could be, these should hopefully make it easier for you to be there. So perhaps the most important one, and I cannot stress this enough, fill in everything. If they have a field, fill it in, don't leave it blank. All of these social media platforms, they're constantly working to improve what they do, the service that they provide you, the analytics that they generate. They're constantly researching what will increase the impact of those profiles. So if they've put a field there, it's because they think filling in that field will make you more visible online. So don't leave it empty. Secondly, this might seem really stupid, but always include accurate information. You don't have to include everything about yourself, but don't lie. These profiles are visible to the whole world, and if you say something that's not true, or maybe hide something that people know about a bit, or say you went to one university when in fact you did not go to university at all, you'll get caught out and it'll undermine everything you've done, which would be unfortunate. Again, choosing a suitable username. This is really important because your peers see this, your employers see this, but also we might create an account when we're at university and you don't want to change your account later because it's your account, you've built up a following. So make sure that it's a username that is both suitable and can grow with you, nothing silly, like I love puppies or something, but also that it's going to be suitable for you as you progress as a career. You also don't want it to be boring, of course. We all want to be distinctive, we want to be unique, particularly on those more casual platforms like Twitter. So it is a balancing act. You do need to choose which is going to work best, but just think it through. Profile picture. Please never leave your profile blank. It's so important. So many people forget this. They think, I don't want people to see me. It would be embarrassing, or I'll do it later. And yes, sometimes it can be awkward having your face all over the place. It doesn't actually have to be your face, though. Your profile picture, some of my best friends who are academics, their profile pictures are actually the caricatures. So it's distinctive. It's still recognizable as them. Like I can see people at conferences and say, oh my God, you're so-and-so. I follow you on Twitter. We were talking about Byron a few weeks ago, and I'll recognize them, but it's not their face. So if you're uncomfortable about having your actual face out there are other options. You can also use all those, animated, like game-playing style characters that they create that sort of look a bit like you. Or even you can have something you really like cheese or kittens, or just make sure you fill it in and make sure it's not too embarrassing, basically. And finally, this is really important. Remember to tailor the tone and content of what you're doing to the different platforms. Again, this might sound really obvious, but you would probably be amazed, because you're all avid social media users, at how often people use the same tone across all the platforms, forgetting that they're speaking to different audiences in each of these different platforms. Now, the biography. This is, again, it can be quite difficult. We only have a few short words to make an impact, tell people about us, who we are, what we do, and about our research. So it can be quite difficult to fit all that content in. So just a few tips. It's really important to make sure your personality shines through. Don't look at other people's profiles and copy all the same words, because then your profile's boring and there's nothing that stands out. So make sure your personality shines through. Give a few interesting tips about yourself, or just choose something that makes you unique. But don't be inappropriate or foolish, again, like with the usernames. And also remember, you only have a few words to make an impact, so choose them carefully. Think about the key words that you would use to describe yourself, but also think, it's like choosing the keywords for our article. When we choose the keywords for our article, when we send it into the journal, it's the 5 or 6 words that we think people will search and therefore see our research. You'll want to do the same thing for you, the 5 or 6 words that will make you stand out, that will make people find you online, but also want to follow you, want to connect with you, want to engage with you. Remember, you want to be informative and imaginative, so you stand out, but again, it's a balance. Remember your audience, and as we mentioned before, please remember to update your bio regularly. Don't just create it and think that it's done, because you get promoted, your research interests change, the things you've done recently change. So, even if you just schedule a little time slot in your calendar for once every 6 months, pop in, double check all your profiles, check you're happy with everything. 9 times out of 10 you won't be changing anything anyway, but it's worth having that in your calendar so you do remember, because otherwise, as we just saw with my own professional bio on my company website, 2 years go by without you even realizing, and suddenly you realize it's a little out of date. And most importantly, I've underlined it here, link to all your other social media accounts. Again, this probably seems really obvious, but people often forget this, and it is so important to remember to do that. You want to make people find you in every place possible. You want them to follow you, the same people to follow you on all your accounts. So make it easy for them. Now, most of you have scholarly profiles anyway, but I just want to run through it in a bit more detail because I wasn't sure before we ran the activity, if you would. So, as we all know, probably the single most important thing on social media, with the possible exception of Twitter, which is huge for academics, for researchers. So, for those of you who said that they didn't have an ORCID account, I will just explain it very quickly because I noticed some of you didn't. Now, platforms such as ORCID are great. They give each researcher a persistent digital identifier. This is effectively like your very own DOI, the DOI that they assign to an article, but it's yours. And it's great. You own it, you control it, you can do with it what you want. And it not only distinguishes you from every researcher out there, but also allows you to connect their ID with your professional information, your career history, your publications, your awards, funding, memberships, institutional positions, noted positions of distinction, just basically everything that you want people to know about you if you were to go to a job is all here nicely summarized. And yes, this information is sometimes included on the professional employer page, but you might move employer, you might forget to update it sometimes, or like me, you periodically forget. I can never fill in the funding section of this because although I know I got loads of funding, I can never remember all the specifics, so I keep delaying it to go through emails. But once it's up there, once I get around to doing it, it'll be there and I don't need to worry about forgetting it. Also, as you might have noticed, when I showed you the screenshot of all of my profiles, most of my online profiles are in a different name to the name I'm talking under today. That's because that is my maiden name before I got married and changed my name to my husband's name. So I started publishing as an academic as Emily Patterson Morgan. And obviously that's what all the articles are filed under, and that's what my ORCID ID is. But the reason these profiles are great is that it does allow you to pull in all of your identities. So I can pull in the work I do as an academic, as Emily Patterson Morgan, and the work I do for Knowledge E and as a publisher, as Emily Tchaikovsky, and put it all in one place for people to see. And that's really important because it helps people know that I am both of these people as well. Now, as we already said, there's also other places you should be going to: Google, ResearchGate, academia.edu, Scopus. There's so many other platforms. You don't need to get fixated on ORCID, though it is a useful one. And also, don't forget that sometimes your IDs will also get automatically generated. So this Scopus ID got generated the first time I wrote an article in a journal that was published in Scopus, and all I had to do afterwards was go and claim that ID as my own. And it pops up here automatically in your ORCID account to let you know that it exists, and then you can just go off and claim it and build it, and that just makes life way easier. So, you've got your profile, but what are you going to do about it? Now, the first thing is, I've said it before, I'm going to keep saying it throughout the rest of this workshop, the more connections you make, the more visible you are. And there's 3 key things you can do to build your networks. Find and follow valuable accounts, build relationships through engagement and tagging, and increase impact through communication. So let's start with talking about how to find and follow people. New connections and new communities can be identified via relevant subject and topic hashtags and by searching scholarly websites. You basically want to follow experts in your field, academic or industry, depending what sector you're in, or both, subject and topic blogs and hashtags and groups, associations, both academic and professional, and depending on your field, ministries, departments, elected officials, think tanks, policy non-profits, and the press. Let's not forget the press, the social media press, and newspapers, they're very useful to us. But remember, as I said before, there is no point in having these accounts if they are inactive. So even if you don't create your own content beyond the basic profile, it is so important that you engage with other people's posts with likes, comments, and repostings. Now, for those of you who said in the previous activity that you post all the time, great. You're already really well established. You've probably got a decent following. And for those of you who post less or not at all, don't worry, as I said, you're not alone. But you are missing out on crucial opportunities to promote your work to that global audience, to increase the impact of your research, and to build your professional profile. As you can see, again, these were supposed to be crosses. I apologize, it's the weird font thing. Out of all the benefits that you can get from social media, if you're not posting yourself and posting new original content, you're only getting some of those benefits. No, they're still great benefits, but they're not everything that you could be getting. So remember, it's all about engagement. Liking other people's posts, sharing them, and offering interesting comments all help to increase your visibility. Plus, they help you to build those all-important networks. And here are just a few little tips around that communication. So remember to be positive. Never say negative things. It's just don't. People will respond badly. It won't make you any friends. Be specific. Don't just say, hey, great post. Say, I really liked this part of your article, or I found that chart showing blah, blah, blah. Really helpful with this thing that I am working on. And be personal. Remember you want them to respond to you as a person, so be personal. Say, I liked this. I found this helpful for me in this context. It does help build that sense of connection between you and this person who you've never met. Let's face it, they're off in the ether somewhere in the distance. You've never met them, but you want them to feel like you could be a friend, a peer, a colleague, someone that they want to work with in the future. Connect to current events or your specialist knowledge. So again, make yourself seem knowledgeable and interesting. Say something like COVID or things that are happening now. So when there was that giant oil tanker that got stuck in Suez, you can connect something to that. Try and engage on an immediate level so that your messages pick up with more people. And also, link everything with your research. We're on here to promote our research. Mention your research whenever possible. Add useful references. If you're talking about an article, include that link. Make it easier for people to find it. And always, it's like being in class. If you're a lecturer in class and you're talking to people, ask a question. Ask a stimulating question to get a response. People are more likely to engage with you. Ultimately, the more connections you make, the more you engage with other accounts, and the more content you create, the more visible you will be, and the more opportunities there are for people to get to know about you and your research. So let's move on to part 3. The how to promote your research, how to create new content. So we've chosen what social media platforms we want to use, and we've created our profiles and started building our networks and engaging with the larger communities. Now it's time to start promoting that research. As I've already mentioned, social media platforms offer so many opportunities to promote that research in so many different ways we can do it. We can promote it indirectly through engagement in ongoing debates, and by making people aware of who we are and what we do. But we can also promote it actively by discussing specific articles or books on our profiles. And the best way to do that is to make our research accessible. And this is so important to remember. There's loads and loads of things to think about when you're considering how can my research be accessible. Is it open access, or is it locked behind an expensive paywall? Is it accessible for people with hearing and vision impairments? Is it accessible for people with reading difficulties? Is it accessible for busy people who probably don't have time to read thousands and thousands and thousands of words? And finally, and this is so important again, is it accessible for non-specialists? Can I understand your article on neurosurgery? Realistically, probably not, but your goal is to make me as a non-neurosurgeon understand what you're talking about. Published research is typically written for niche audiences of specialists in this specific field. And this means that this content is incredibly dense and difficult to understand. And I, as the non-neurosurgeon over here, won't understand a word of it. But thanks to social media, we're able to frame our research in different ways to make it understandable to me, the non-specialist over here. So, little snippets, quotes, and bite-sized nuggets of information on Twitter, chatty videos on YouTube, and engaging blog posts. And in this section, I'm going to offer a few tips on those 3 different types of content. But first, I just want to discuss the broader tips for communicating in general when you create content on social media. So first of all, make sure your content is accessible, easy to understand, and relevant. Why should I want to read your article? Why should I want to stop scrolling down Twitter and read your post? You need to hook me, tell me why I care. Why do I care about what you're doing? And that's always, whenever you do anything on social media, that's what you've always got to be thinking about. Why should they care? I as the writer, I need to make them care about what I'm doing. So, also, on a general note, remember to add alt text and subtitles where appropriate. Social media, increasingly, it's accessible to everyone, so make sure your content can be read or listened to or absorbed and understood by everyone. Again, we said it about images before. They say, a picture speaks 1,000 words, but more importantly, it grabs the eye and it stops people when they're scrolling, and they makes them stop and look at your post. Use hashtags wisely. We all know they're important, but not everyone necessarily uses them in the best possible way. Don't just chuck 30 hashtags in your post. Make sure that they're trending and relevant, and only ever use 1 or 2, never more than 3. Never ever put more than 3 hashtags in a social media post, because it's too many things. It's too much going on. People will just go all over the place, and it dilutes what you're doing. Think about the relevant keywords and who you're trying to engage with. And again, we already talked about keywords earlier, choosing those keywords, but also when I say thinking about your audience, think about who you're trying to engage with and what country they're from, and what language you're going to use. Because ultimately, the more people you can reach out to, the more people you can build connections with, and the more people you can tell about your research. So don't just post in Arabic, don't just post in English, post in both. And also, if you have other languages, make posts in those languages as well. Try and build communities with as many people around the world as possible, because that's more people you can tell about your research. People who might not have read the abstract, it might not pop up in their search filter because the words they're using are in a different language to your language. So you might all be using the same term, but if it's in a different language, Google and those other search filters, they don't always pick it up. So tell people, make it easy, as I said it before, make it easy for people to find you in as many places and as many languages as possible. And finally, again, I've said this before, but it's the same for your profile as your individual content. Tailor the tone of your content to the platform. For example, my Twitter account, I'm not going to lie, there's a lot of kittens and literature. My LinkedIn profile is much more professional, so I talk about things like today's event. No kittens. So I just want to talk about this now really quickly before we finish, and I appreciate it's been a while, a long talk, so thank you for staying with me. Video abstracts, really quickly. Now, they've been around for a while. People have started making them for a while, but people aren't necessarily using them as they should. Every time you write an article, you should be creating a short video abstract. Even if the journal doesn't ask for it, create the video, put it on YouTube, and put it on your social media profiles, because it's a really, really high impact way of telling people about your research. It's a different medium. People respond well to it. They can watch it on while they're traveling. They can, read it while they're doing something else. Not read, but watch. But it's much more accessible than dense text. And the creation of the abstract makes you think about those key things that we talked about, the keywords and the key arguments. So 7 easy stages, and as I said before, you'll be sending around resources with more details about this, so there's a more detailed set of instructions that we'll send after this workshop. But just the highlights now. Identify the key argument. Your 10,000-word article, you don't have 10,000 words worth of video time. I mean, 10,000 words is about, 2.5 hours, give or take? You don't have that long. People aren't going to be interested. You're aiming to do something in 2 minutes, absolute maximum, 2 minutes. So that's around 750 words. That's all you've got, if you're lucky, maybe 300, so depending on whether you've got pictures and things. So identify the key argument. What are you trying to say to people? What do you want them to know about this? What are you going to say that makes your argument, your article so important that they are going to go away and read that article? Remember your audience. Who are you talking to? It's not just your peers. It's the broader public. It might be the press. The press also look at these video abstracts sometimes, pick it up, realize that your research might be relevant, and then call you in for an interview. So remember your audience. Make it as accessible as possible, and when you're thinking about the key argument, think about making it relevant to that audience. Make speaker notes. You don't have to read from them. You can talk more naturally. You can ad lib if you want and just kind of go with the flow. But make the speaker notes in advance, because that helps you narrow down and think about what you're actually saying and really drill down to those key points. Set up the recording. You can use any device you want, Zoom, even just your own computer will allow you to do that. The software doesn't really matter. You don't need anything fancy. You don't need a special microphone. You can just sit in your house and do the recording. Record your presentation, obviously. And again, don't worry, if you make a mistake in your presentation, you can just press pause and start again. Don't get flustered, don't get stressed, just be really relaxed around it. No one's going to see it till you're ready, so just take your time. Edit the recording. Again, you don't need expensive software for this. All the computers have it now. It's just part of the sort of standard Microsoft package and all the other software. And you don't have to do anything fancy again, just cut out the mistakes. So again, if you make a mistake when you're talking, pause, go back to the beginning, and then you'll know that that's of it. Now with Twitter, there are some different things to consider. Now, you were all, I saw from the activity, you're all clearly very avid Twitter users, so apologies if I'm telling you things you already know. But I'm going to use a tweet that I created a while ago as just an example of some things to think about, because again, we don't always know quite what's going to work and quite what we should be doing. And more importantly, we see what other people are doing, but we might not know why they're doing it. So that's what this slide is going to say. Now, as I mentioned, you only have a tiny, tiny, tiny number of words to get your message across. So it's really, really important that you choose them wisely, to be strategic with your contractions and your abbreviations, and where you put emojis in. But don't cut or abbreviate too much, because no one's going to have a clue what you're trying to say. Second, again, I keep reiterating this point a lot today, but the image is so, so important for Twitter. Recent studies have shown that people are 88% more likely to stop and read your post if you have an image there. So basically, if you're not putting an image in, find something relevant, but just find something to put in. And also make sure it displays properly. So try and make it that banner size, because if you have a vertical one, you might end up thinking you've shown this really great photo of some piece of research you're working on, and all that they can actually see is this corner of sky up at the top, because it's showing the different points. So be aware of sizing things. And in this particular post, so this post is about an article I wrote a while ago, and the image I chose is an 18th century satirical print, 19th century satirical print that was the illustration to the section of the poem I'm talking about. So it's both kind of a fun image and attracts people and makes them want to know what I'm talking about, but also is directly linked to what I'm talking about. It's not a random image, it is directly relevant. Now, I mentioned how important hashtags are for your content, but hashtags only work if lots of people are using them and reading them, because it leads new people to your post. And helps to increase your impact and potentially, hopefully, fingers crossed, your citations. Luckily, Twitter offers loads of help with this. So as you start typing your hashtag, it'll pull up similar ones and tell you how many times it's been posted in the past hour, if it's really popular, in the past day, in the past week. So use that to help make your decisions. Obviously, it takes a little more time. You have to try 2 or 3 variations, but it is worth it. But remember, less is more. I said this before. Ideally, only have 1 or 2, never have more than 3. Now, here I've used Byron because that's my subject topic, and open access to show people that they can access that piece of research. Do tag other accounts. Again, you want to make your content as visible as possible. Tag other accounts, but only when it's relevant. So here I've tagged the owner of the journal, the Byron Society, and the publisher of the journal, Liverpool University Press, because when they both retweet, my content will reach a huge number of more followers, and because the way I've said thank you to them, they will retweet because it's something positive I've said to them. Remember we said about communication earlier, make it be positive. And so, as you can see, it's been quite successful. I got quite a few retweets and likes, so not the best, but pretty happy. That was 100, 200 odd people who I showed my article to. And remember at the bottom, if you're going to include an article, if you're promoting your article, include a link and make sure you use one of the URL shorteners to include that link so that you don't waste those valuable characters. I usually use bit.ly. I have to say it's my favorite one and it's free, which is always nice. But it's up to you what you use. Also, don't just use one sort of post. There's loads of different types of posts out there, so do make sure you use all of them. Now, last but not least, let's look at creating blog posts. Now, to my mind, there are 2 standard types of blog post: the predominantly informative and the predominantly entertaining. Now, there's obviously crossover. Informative blogs that are really well written can be quite funny, and entertaining ones still have a lot of good information there. But it's all about how you're writing it and how you're pitching it and what you're going to do with that blog. So here's just 2 examples here. Nope, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I missed the next slide, I really apologize. Missed the text there again, so you might have trouble reading that one. I'll read it out as well. But for this one, so this is your informative blog. This one's really directly pushing your research actively and openly, a specific article or subject field. So make sure you have that clear, simple headline. Interesting, but not too funky. Open with a current event or a hot topic being debated in your field. That's how you're going to hook people and bring them in and make your research relevant. Remember, we talked about relevancy earlier. Brief description of your research, and more importantly, a brief description of how your research is useful. Again, remember that why should I care? Make me care as the reader about your research. Make it relevant and make me care, and then link to your articles. Now this side, I apologize. I'm going to read this out to you because I don't know what font this actually is. So for the other one, the fun one, think about your audience. You want them to enjoy what you're doing, so what would make them laugh? What will entertain them? They're going to be sitting there. You want them to read this blog while they're having coffee or on the train or something, and they've got some time that they want to use up and, oh, there's this interesting blog, great, I'll read it. So think about them. Have a catchy headline and a chatty writing style. It's much more relaxed, it's friendly. You've also got to have an interesting topic or hook, again, like the relevance or the hot topic or debate, but just to bring them in. Again, why would they want to read it? And for the content, it's not all dry research. Have fun facts and anecdotes and really show your personality, and that's so important. And finally, you can make indirect references to your research, but this isn't about your core research. You're not trying to push your people's faces into your work, so be casual about it. Maybe include it in your author bio, but don't be like, and here is this long article that I have written, and read it. And here's a little example of a blog I did. I did it for the British Association of Romanticism, and it's on Byron's birthday. So this worked well, and I'll just run, I'm aware we're running out of time, so I'll just run this through this quickly. We had, I thought about the audience. I knew my audience. They're predominantly early career researchers and some enthusiasts, and they're based around the world. I had a sort of catchy headline that was a quote from Byron. It told you exactly what I'm writing about, but also was relevant because it was a quote. The hook is his birthday, so that really allowed me to use the On This Day hashtag, which has huge numbers of followers, and there's also huge press and social media coverage every year around Byron's birthday. And an added advantage, I was writing about his 1821 birthday, and this was published on his birthday 200 years later, the same day in 2021. So there was a lot of good hashtags that I could use there, and it got quite good coverage. Lots of interesting facts. It's fun, it's interesting. He was 36 or 33 in this one and getting very sad about getting old, and lots of things around dodgy hair treatments he was using, like egg yolk, to try and prevent hair loss. I talked about myself. I let my personality shine through, which is one of the key points. And finally, I didn't mention my research directly, but just allowed people to be aware of what I'm doing. So this is why blogs are so useful. You don't have to hammer home your research, but it helps people, broader field people, be aware of who you are. You're on their radar. They know you. They're aware of you now. They know you're working in the field that you're working in. Now, I promise the end is in sight. Bear with me, we're nearly there. So this one is a quick one. It's 2 questions on here, and then there's a little exercise, which is why you had the paper and notes. So just these 2 first. So once I think you've all got it, just judging by the phones. They seem to have all gone down. So I will just go to the results quickly again. So what makes research accessible? Videos, yeah, open access is obviously really popular. ResearchGate, yes. Short videos, thank you. I'm not sure what the answer means, but I'm going to assume it's something in Arabic, maybe, or a typo. The value, yes, the value does make it accessible. ResearchGate again. I wouldn't say, yes, money does technically make research accessible, but the whole point is if you have to pay money to get the research, then it's really not accessible. Keywords, yes, thank you. Citations, yes. References. Good, we're all there, I think. We'll move on to the next question, if I can find it. The next question's a bit of a trickier one. So for the next question, thinking about what we've just been covering in the past almost an hour, describe your research to make it accessible for non-specialists. Tell me, as a non-specialist, I don't know any of you, I don't know what you study, what is it you study specifically? So for example, I use the poetry of Lord Byron to explore 19th century print culture. And different trends. So I moved from religion to politics and various areas. Okay. Oh, is someone actually studying Twitter? If so, that's amazing. I don't know who you are, but fab. Targeted drug delivery, pictures, fabricate nanowires. See, these are all really complicated. I have no idea what they mean, but thank you. You're really, yes. Think of it short and sweet. This is the goal. Renewable energy, oil feedstock, mobile networks. Let's see if it scrolls down. This is great. Thank you, everyone. Ooh. City planning, Islamic finance, microbiology. Good. Yeah, so you've really got all the short words. Just because I'm conscious that we're running out of time, it's going to be back. So there's one more activity now. What I want you to do is just put everything into practice. We're not going to share this. You don't need to worry that, I'm going to call you up on stage and ask you to read it out. We're not going to do that. But just imagine you have sat down now and you're going to post, you're going to create a blog post. We're thinking about the blog post. You've approached me as the head of an organization, or academic society in your field, and you're pitching this blog post to me, and I'm like, great. Go for it. So what you need to think about is this. This is the information. When you start that process of creating that piece of unique content to promote your work, think about these. So you've got a piece of paper, hopefully most of you, and some pens, and just take 2 or 3 minutes. I won't do the full 7 minutes because we are time short, but just a couple of minutes to think about this. And once again, we will be sending all of this information around afterwards as well for you. I should really have brought one to do myself as well while I was standing here. That would be way less awkward than just standing. So in the interest of timing, you've got all of this information here, so do think about this. And as I said, I will be sending all of this around, but when you do come and sit and think about the blog post, do think about all of this. Think about the audience. Think about whether you're doing informative or entertaining. Keep track of the original title, because that's normally got some good, juicy keywords in there. But then do think about that catchy title. You want to make people read. Why am I going to read it? You know, how are you going to lure me in? Because titles can be very boring. We all know this. Academic article titles in particular, very dry, a lot of them. So make it interesting, appealing. Use that contemporary debate or that hot topic or something to hook people in, or pose a really interesting question. Ask the reader a question like, did you know blah, 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 or how do you achieve this? And they'll go, oh, I don't know. Maybe I'll read this and learn more. As I said, get that current event in or that interesting topic hook, and then plan that outline of what you want to cover, because you won't have much space. You know, we're all used to writing an awful lot of content. I mean, the last article I had published was, I think, 13,000 words. We're not always, as academics, great at those short, sweet, pulling everything together. So outline first, and that'll also help you pull out the bits that are really, really, really relevant, as opposed to the bits that you find it interesting as a specialist in your field, but that the broader public might not really care about. It breaks my heart when I have to take away those interesting facts, which I think are amazing, but we all have to do it. Keywords and themes, you know, it's a brainstorming document. Something like this should really help you just come up with the idea. Also, you might end up finding that enough keywords and themes pop out that you could do 2 blog posts. You could even do one informative one and one entertaining one on the same topic for 2 different organizations, and therefore 2 different audiences. Really maximize that impact. Connections, hashtags, and let's not forget those all-important images. Now, thank you for bearing with me so long. I appreciate it. I've talked a lot. So for the conclusion, the key thing is, I just want to finish with a really brief overview of how we can measure that success, because it takes such a long time to build up these social media profiles, to build up impact, and to create content and gain followers. It can often feel like we're doing all this work for no reason. We're achieving nothing, you know, and you get that one like on a post that you've probably spent 10 minutes or 15 minutes creating. It can be really depressing. So remember, first of all, I put it at the bottom, but I'll say it at the top as well. Be patient. This takes time, and it's so important you remember that. Look at the outputs. What have you done? Give yourself praise for what you've done, but also keep track of what you've done so you can see what works and what doesn't. And you evaluate that by looking at the outcomes. Which types of posts are working? Which platforms are you having the most effect? Where are you getting the most followers? Where are you getting the most engagement? Might not always be the same. So occasionally, just schedule a little time, you know, once or twice a year, to just look at what you've done and see. And this is the strategic review, because it's like any other piece of work. We're doing this to promote our research. We're doing this to increase our impact. It's effectively part of being a researcher in the modern era. So schedule time in your working day to sit down and review what you're doing and see if it's working. It's like any other piece of scientific work or any other piece of academic work. You need to evaluate your performance effectively. There's lots of tools, as you probably already know. Now that we don't just have to rely on citations, there's all of these places that we can go to get those alternative metrics, to track our news mentions, our blog mentions, our Twitter likes, our everything. Tools like these are super helpful for that. And finally, just a couple of points. Just remember, investigate the tools, connect with the networks, communicate with others, and increase your impact. And again, please, please, please be patient. All of this does take time, but your research is valuable, and people will care about it and want to read it and want to respond to it, and therefore increase your impact. But you have to make them aware of it. Be visible, and they will respond. And just here, once again, although you have it on the piece of paper handed out, here is the QR code, so if you do want the slides and everything else afterwards, scan the QR code, send us your details, and we will email everything out later. I don't know if we have time for Q&A or not. I appreciate I talked. Okay, brilliant. Well, there's 10 minutes if anyone has any questions for me. Yes.
I would like to thank you. Okay. Yeah. First, I would like to thank you for the presentation, which was, I think, in my opinion, was very helpful. But I've got a question here. we shed light on mostly on how can I benefit from the social media to, to find a way to present myself and my work, which is good. But my question here is, what about if I want to, just like a kind of turning the table around to make the social media as a source, a main source that can help me to, make my research so helpful for the people. Not here, the question is not how to use the social media to present myself and my work. No, how can I use the social media as a source or main source, like, so using books and all other stuff, like magazines and all that stuff. How could I use the social media and pick the correct one for me?
I think, just to clarify, are you talking about using it as a way of finding research or enlarging your research?
Yes.
Hashtags. Subject hashtags are, the two biggest ones are, subject hashtags are amazing. You will, if you type in, again, it comes back to that keyword thing. Think about the keywords of your research, use those hashtags, and they'll pop up stuff on Twitter, it'll pop up stuff on, maybe not Instagram, depends if you're really visual or not, but just finding out. But also, I had some extra slides on that actually, but had to cut them because of time. So hashtags are incredibly important. Signing up to listservs. So, for example, the British Association of Romanticism, where I had that blog, and I'm one of the digital editors, we have a huge membership. It's predominantly in Europe and America, but we do have people from around the world. And we have email lists. So people register for those emails, and we send around interesting facts. And technically, because it's always linking back to pages on the website, and everyone sends us that information and we then distribute it, that technically counts, peculiarly enough, as social media, so I would say that's one. But no, the big one for me, I use Twitter in particular a lot to find new research in my field that I'm not aware of through the hashtags. So the subject fields, I might use romanticism or Byron or specific topics that I'm using, because that also... Newspapers now as well, if you're in social sciences or social policy, or you're looking for something you want to incorporate into your research, relevant, up-to-date, non-academic commentary, like newspapers in particular. Newspapers themselves use hashtags a lot now for the links to their content. So again, that'll help you peruse the sort of the broader networks
like
of what's going on.
That's what led me, okay, I got the idea now. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I've got a question. I have few accounts on different platforms, like Twitter and Instagram. I used to be very active on Instagram when I was doing my PhD, but not anymore. Is it really a problem if I am not active? I've got like Twitter account, but all what I do is retweeting some the university news. I've got very important information on my research area, but I really want people to know about this information, but I am not very active. Is it a problem or not?
It's not a problem per se, in as much as it's not like it's the rule, it's not the law that you have to use Twitter, you don't have to listen to me, you don't have to do any of this. But if you want to really capitalize on the potential, then basically if you do nothing, no one's ever going to see your content. It's like you can have the best research idea, but if you never actually do the research or publish it, then you're never going to get the credit for it. So it's kind of like that. It would be rude of me, and I would never say it's not a problem, but it's like publishing your research. No one's ever going to know about your research unless you get it in a journal. In the same way, you're not going to build up that audience and that impact if you don't start using it more regularly. But it doesn't even have to be, I know I've talked a lot and it can seem, and I know because I felt exactly the same way when I started with social media particularly, it feels very daunting, it feels like a lot of work, and we're already so busy as academics, as professionals, the day is full, basically. It feels like there's never any more time. But just start to do it. What I would suggest is if you have a coffee break in the morning or 10 minutes in the afternoon, try and just set aside a little time, just once a day, and think about one post. That's all you have to do. Just try that, start small, and build up. And then you have a chance to just start to make it count. And even if you don't have time to create new content, do start engaging with other people. If you don't want to do those posts yourself, don't just retweet other people. Always retweet with a quote. But then maybe if you can comment in their thread as well, just try and reach out to them, ask a question so that they follow you back, so that they start engaging. Then they might respond and their followers will see you having that sort of real-time discussion with someone they follow, and they themselves might then follow you. And later then when you do those posts, later when you feel more confident and you've got a bit more time, then they'll be on your follower list, so therefore they'll see that research. So it's just little steps. It's always little steps. I'm not wondering. I don't know who's supposed to ask questions, so.
I'm sorry. Just thank you for. Is it clear? Thank you for your presentation, the wonderful one. I've got a question about.
Sorry, could you speak into the microphone?
Okay. How I can, if that possible, how I can use the social media as like a source of data collection?
So for data collection, there are a lot of people working on that separately. It's not really my field, I have to say. I think that there's a lot of open access articles about it, though, so I'm afraid I'm answering with a non-question answer. I'm sorry about that. For your own data, you can see the data. Also polls. Sorry, if you're trying to collect information, sorry, I'm misinterpreting the question. If you want to use Twitter to collect information itself, have the polls. They have this function, which most of you are probably aware of already, where you can create little polls. You can only create up to 4 items, but you can run repeat polls and go through, and that will give you some information. But again, the traction, you're not going to get that many people responding unless you've already built up a good follower base.
Thank you.
I think there's the lady in the white here as well.
Thank you, Dr. Émilie, for a really engaging and impactful workshop. This is Dr. Haneen Shuaib, the Dean of the Advertising College in the University of Business and Technology. And I would like to ask about how to make research impactful for policy making in relation to the type of media best used for that. You mentioned different type of platforms, and you mentioned popular media as well. So for policy making, how to influence and which medium?
Again, it's sort of a non-answer, I'm afraid. It very much depends upon your field because, again, just like us as researchers, we all respond better to different mediums, different journalists and different types of policymaker all go to different places. So because I'm in different places, I've been approached by journalists to do certain things. Obviously, my research, 19th century literature, I don't get policymakers coming to me at all, unsurprisingly. But I do get a lot of journalists because Byron in the 19th century, it's a very popular topic, particularly in Britain. So what I would say is do your research. See whether people you want to... LinkedIn's an obvious one as well. If you're looking for specific policymakers, obviously follow them on LinkedIn because that's a professional account and that's really important. But a lot of the policymakers will either work for the government or work for think tanks. And both of those will have their own social media accounts as well across multiple platforms. So find them and follow them. It's like any piece of research. You need to kind of go and find all the moving parts and engage with them. And then after that, I would suggest news in general. Popular media is great. So again, it's sort of like the blog post. The best way, so one of my friends who's an academic in the social sciences, one of the things she does that she's found very effective for getting her research into popular media in particular is when there is a hot topic that she knows is relevant, she reaches out. She doesn't wait for them to come to her. She reaches out to them and says, I can give you information about this. I can be your recommended expert. I know what I'm talking about. And here are my credentials. This proves that I am who I am. And here, just to show that I'm not lying, are all of my social media accounts, LinkedIn, Orchid, everything else. So you can see who I am. You can see what I'm publishing on. You can see in my follower base. Therefore, you can trust me and that I'm reputable. So I would say those are two things. It comes down to, there's no oh, well, you definitely, for policymakers, you have to go to this particular platform. I'm afraid it doesn't really work like that. It's everyone's people. They all have their favorites. But find them. Target the ones you want and start, and also when you find one person, look at all of their followers and go through their lists, particularly if you have an admin assistant or someone to do it, because let's face it, it's a bit boring. And go through all of those lists, and they can then find relevant people in those people's connections. And again, it's like the spider web. We all know how social media works.
Thank you so much.
Hi. Thank you for the workshop. I have a question regarding the using different language in posting in the social media. How do you recommend doing that? In one post, like using both language in one post, or posting the same thing?
Post the same thing in different languages so that...
Immediately, I mean posting the same thing twice, for example, if I'm using...
I would say leave a little time lag, not least because realistically, there's a time difference. Don't forget, you want to be posting when people are awake, particularly for Twitter, less so for some of the other platforms, but for Twitter in particular, you've got about, depending on the size of your other followers' own follower timelines, you've got 5 minutes to make an impact, and then your tweet's gone. They're never going to see it. So realistically, for example, if I want to post, I have accounts that I post for when I'm posting for work. I'm posting for this region. When I'm posting for Byron, I'm posting mostly for back in the UK. So I tend to do posts at different times. So when I'm posting for this region, I'll post sort of mid-morning, lunchtime in this region. But I always remember that the UK is 3 or 4, depending on the time of year, hours behind. So then I want to hit their lunchtime when they're sitting there having their coffee break or just scrolling their phone because they've got nothing to do. So if you're going to do it, it's only worth doing it properly. So again, it comes back to thinking about your audience. When are they likely to be on Twitter? When are they going to be on LinkedIn? And do your post to time it appropriately. But no, I would say definitely do separate language posts. Don't try and do too much in one post, because the problem is you then waste your words just saying the same thing twice, and it undermines the impact.
Okay, thank you.
One more, I think. Oh, yes. Hang on. This lady's got the remote first.
Thank you so very much for your presentation. My name is Dr. Bayan Baadiyeh from the Department of Physical Therapy, Faculty of Medical Rehabilitation Sciences. I do have a question regarding the social media advertisements for our research and publications. So the presentation was focusing on the advantages of using the social media to advertise for our research interest or our publications. In your opinion, what do you think the disadvantages for like boosting our research in social media, or what risks of that, and also what mistakes we may make if we boast our research or publications or research ideas in the social media websites or platforms?
Okay, good question. I think the first risk is obviously you don't want to, it's a balancing act between letting people know who you are and doing your research and not giving away that crucial information before you've published. Again, not really relevant so much from my field because it's not that cutthroat and not really time sensitive, but certainly I know in sciences in particular, there's always this huge risk that you might give the game away. You might give away that crucial bit of information that lets someone else make that discovery before you. So depends on your field. And you obviously don't want to only talk when you've posted, published an article, because then you're not going to build up the connection with everyone and keep people aware of what you're doing. So it is a balancing act between finding interesting content and not giving away that really valuable stuff until it's published. And then the other thing is, unfortunately, I'm sure we're all aware of it, not everyone's nice on social media. It's a fact of life. There are Twitter trolls, there are people who seem to delight in making their life's purpose being awful to other people. And even aside from that, there is always the risk that it's the same risk that we have when we publish an article. You can publish an article, and then the next conference you go to, some other academic comes up and gets really angry because they feel that you've challenged their research or they think you're wrong, and people get very invested in their work. It's understandable. It's what we do. It's our whole life. If someone attacks us or says, oh, so-and-so on page 46 of their book that was published 20 years ago didn't do this object. Obviously, times have changed, but so-and-so might be a bit upset. So you get that, but when we're doing it in person and you're waiting for those sort of 2 years before someone sees your article and everything, it's much slower and it's much less personal. On Twitter, when you get involved in one of those debates, it can be very vicious and it can be very hurtful, and tons of people from around the world can dive in, and even though they've got no skin in the game, as we say in England, even though it's got nothing to do with them, they can dive in. But by and large, that shouldn't happen. It comes back to thinking about your audience and crafting your post sensibly. So around the mistakes, I would say the big mistake is saying something that you can't back up. You know, always have the facts to hand, even if you're not including them. Always make sure you've got the facts. Or saying something that could be insensitive. So when we do social media for Knowledge, for the company, one of the things we have to do is be so careful that the imagery that we choose isn't making people feel bad about themselves. For example, we were doing an article about weight loss, and one of the marketing team pulled up a post. So we were promoting from, we have one of our journals as a nutrition exercise journal, and the marketing team had chosen an article of a really, really fat woman. And that actually we couldn't have done, because then all the people who are larger proportions would have been like, you're being sizist, this is really rude. So it's things like that. Always be aware of all the angles, try and think, because those are the other things that can get you a very bad reputation. Unfortunately, it only takes one of those posts to undo all the work you've done. So I guess be tactful. And just try and think, effectively, your starting point is, can someone take offense at this? Is there any human way someone could take offense at this? If not, good to go, press post and you're fine.
Thank you so much.
And I think there was first question, or?
Yeah, yes, I'd like to make a comment on the question that right before this one. Okay, I think in my opinion, and that's I just noticed also in my studying, because I was studying in the United States, so they very, very, very curious about knowing at least the bottom of the multicultures from the language, so they can use it. And just kind of
Yes, so that's something we mentioned, the alt text and the subtitles.
what you did, I think. So I think gathering the minimum, only the minimum of the culture, it will help a lot, I think, help a lot to deliver the message clearly and make it just sounds funny with it, and do something funny things and stuff with it. It's, I think it would grab the attentions of the audience. So I would like just to add this comment. I think that was. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Yes, I think that's done then.
Okay, so, thank you, Dr. Émilie. Thank you for the interesting talk. I think the first thing that we're going to do after this is updating our profile in the social media. So thank you to Knowledge for providing this workshop. It's very interesting. I think now we have 10 minutes. We're going to move to the main auditorium, المسرح الرئيسي, for the opening ceremony and for the keynote speaking for the first day. شكرا جزيلا لكم. تفضلوا. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Great to have the opportunity.